Well, good evening, everybody. I hope the Huntington CMA family, we're doing well. Um, just a couple of things. Tonight, Janie's not going to join us. She's not feeling great. She's kind of battling some stuff. And right now, she's at work. So when she gets home, she's probably just going to spend some quiet time to herself. But I'm going to start with a couple of things. I'm going to answer a question that was asked of me by phone earlier. And I do so knowing full well that during my candidating weekend, somebody had asked a question about whether or not I was a political type person. And I still maintain that politics really doesn't have a place in the pulpit. But this person asked a question, and I think it's a good question. And the question, before I get to it, let me pray. Jesus, right now, our world feels like it's in turmoil. We feel as if everything is spiraling out of control. In moments where we don't know which way is up, would you just continue to be our North Star? In times where things feel so disjointed and disconnected, would you provide us the unity that we need? As we discuss things this evening, as we talk about things that are sometimes hard to talk about, um, would you just remind us of who we are and who we belong to? And we pray all of this in Jesus' sweet name. Amen. So, yeah, so this question was asked of me, and I'm going to set the stage a little bit before I get to the actual question. Um, I don't know if you've noticed, there's a truckload of kind of unrest right now in the United States. We're starting to seem like we're squirting out on the other side of COVID, only to be greeted by a mess. Um, and it stemmed from the horrific killing of George Floyd and the seemingly callous nature in which it was done. Now, I don't pretend to know the heart of the individual that had his knee on George Floyd's neck. I don't pretend to even know my own heart. My heart will lie to me. But what I do know is that as time has unfolded over last week or so, I've seen people who I love, admire, and trust um, struggle. I've seen that. And then I turn on the TV and I see it doesn't matter what channel you tune into. It is apparent that most newscasters have an agenda. And I will be honest with you, I don't get the sense that they have our best interest in mind. And so that leads to the question that was asked of me: how are we to respond? How are we to respond in times like this where we see all of this stuff going on around us? And so I jotted some of my notes down, and really I'm going to summarize this question by answering two additional questions that he didn't ask, but I'm going to ask. Number one, how are we to respond to injustice? And number two, how are we to respond to someone who does not align with you, whether it's religiously, politically, or even personally? And I think that if we can kind of unpackage that a little bit, it might be helpful. And any amount of time, you'll remember the Micah 6:8 passage. And in Micah 6:8, we're told to seek justice. And the idea behind seeking justice isn't this idea that when we see something done, we want to make certain that the other person is punished for it. When we read "seek justice" in Micah 6:8, it's an advocacy for justice. And I was on a Facebook Live with some representatives from the CMA earlier this evening, actually a little bit right before this, and they said that this is not a political matter, that it's actually a gospel matter. And I think that if we can remember that when we see injustice, it does not matter the color of the skin. It does not matter white, brown, black, yellow, or any person that is being treated unjust, that it is a violation of the intrinsic value of the image of God that that person has. And if we don't address that, then we are silent. And we are silent when somebody is actually damaging the image of God. And we ought to stand up for that. Now, does that mean that you're going to um, well, and let me just actually say another thing on this before I get into that. In James, we are told that if we know that there's something to be done, yet we do not do it, then we are in sin. So remaining silent in the face of injustice is a sin. And oftentimes, to overcome the injustice, it takes the person or the people group of the ones that are in power to affect that change. And if you've been in the alliance for any amount of time, we have not always been great at handling these things of race. There was a time, embarrassingly, that the alliance would not send African American missionaries overseas because they were viewed as intellectually deficient. And so we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go when it comes to things like that. But does that mean that we're supposed to fight every fight? Does that mean that we're going to go out there and throw our hat in the ring with the Black Lives Movement? I don't know the answer to that for you. I will tell you that if it were me, I get cautious throwing my hat behind any movement because at some point down the line, that movement that is actually birthed out of a political movement, they sometimes go off the rail, and then now your name is attached to that. And as we all know, everything on the internet stays on the internet forever. And so when that goes off the rail, I don't want to have to explain later on down the road why I supported something that today I probably would not support. So all that to say is, before you throw your hat in the ring with anything, pray about it. Ask God what He would have you to do. I would say that if you ask Him, He will show you how you ought to respond. And in that, you're going to have two choices: to either respond or ignore God. And I don't know which side of the equation you want to be on that. So, how equally important to this is, how do we respond to people who don't agree with us? Um, we're not really getting any guidance from our political leaders on how to adequately address people who don't agree with us. Oftentimes, we just see, if I could say it this way, a he said, she said, finger pointing, playground behavior of some of the people that we should be looking to be unifiers. And so I'm going to say it this way: we got to remember that a gentle answer turns away wrath. When somebody comes at you and you don't agree with them, they don't agree with you, you can actually look for common ground. But there's also a second part of Proverbs 15:1, and that's: a harsh word stirs up anger. And I like to think about this, that we as members of Christ's family, we have been given this wonderful ministry of reconciliation. This ministry of reconciliation is, yes, first and foremost, it's us to God, but then it's also us to others, that we are to be bridge builders. And oftentimes that means that we're going to have to meet with people that don't look like us, talk like us, walk like us, think like us, may not even smell like us. And that's okay. Um, Sometimes that means that we're going to end up being peacemakers. And let me be clear: peacemaking is a wonderful ministry, but peacemaking is different than peacekeeping. Peacekeeping means that you don't have those hard conversations. Sometimes you just sweep things under the rug. I think peacekeeping is that. Peacemaking is a ministry where you have hard conversations, where when you see somebody say something that is maybe racially insensitive, maybe it's sexist, maybe, I mean, you fill in the blank, maybe it's unbiblical. And I would challenge you that if it's something that would diminish the intrinsic value of anybody, it needs to be confronted. So, but you can do that in a gentle way. You don't have to do it in your face, wagging your finger at that person way. So imagine that you as a Christian are carrying two cans. In one can you have gas, in the other can you have water. And then you come across a fire. Which can are you going to use to put out that fire? Because that's what is needed right now, is this opportunity for us to use a gentle word to turn away wrath. So on this one major takeaway on um, this Facebook Live thing that I was listening to was that change happens at the speed of relationship. And the challenge that I would put to each and every one of us is, we're the Christian and Missionary Alliance. Being a missionary doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go into the deepest, darkest parts of Asia. But being a missionary might mean that you're going to actually have to encounter somebody with whom their culture is different than yours. It doesn't make it better, doesn't make it worse, but it still ought to be celebrated. And I think that that's what we're missing right now, is the celebration of the other, and where we are able to actually engage with the other person in such a way that we value them, we respect them. It, racial and cultural cohesion doesn't mean that you ignore the other person's difference. It's there. I mean, that's what drew you to your significant other, is there were some significant differences. And those differences oftentimes make you stronger, and that's okay. So I think if I haven't, I can't tell if I've lost anybody, and that's okay. But if I have, I'm sorry. Again, this is not meant to offend anybody, but it is meant to be an answer to a question that was asked of me earlier. And again, remember that we are to be ministers of reconciliation, that we are to be actively searching for justice and advocating for it. And again, seek God first and how he would have you to respond. But maybe this will help a little bit. Being in the military, you encounter quite a few people that you wouldn't otherwise encounter in your own local context, especially if you're from a small town. When I left Mount Vernon, Washington, it was a touch of a small town. Like week one in basic training, I offended an African American man. I used what today I would never consider saying to him. It wasn't the N word, but it was definitely a slur. And what it did, and what I've come to realize I should have done, is I needed to seek to first understand his position. I never meant any ill by it. He didn't know that, but it was something that had triggered something deep in him. And until we can seek to understand the other person's perspective, we're going to always struggle in this arena. I don't know what it's like to be a Black man in America today, but I can tell you that when I have a friend who's a pastor in the Cleveland area who tells me that he has been pulled over numerous times and been strip searched numerous times because of the color of his skin, that causes me some concern. When I have another African American friend who gets pulled over, again, just for the color of his skin, who is also a pastor of a pretty major church in the Cleveland area, it breaks my heart. It ought not be that way. Now, I want to address one other thing here, and then we're going to get into the questions. And I know this is somewhat heavy. I am a proponent of the First Amendment. I am a beneficiary of the First Amendment. I get paid by you all because of the First Amendment. I am a huge fan of it. I actually, when I raised my right hand to swear and uphold I didn't swear to defend the United States. I swore to defend the Constitution. And in the Constitution, there is the First Amendment. And so when people talk to me about these protesters, I'm all for these protesters, as much as I'm all for people standing up behind a pulpit on a Sunday morning, or a newspaper reporter writing an article. I'm a fan of the First Amendment. Where I draw the line, and this is where I'm rambling now, where I do draw the line is when you pick up a rock and go to destroy somebody else's property or wound somebody else. Then I have a problem. You're no longer under the guise of the First Amendment. And for those people who think that what I've just said is in support of people rioting and causing property damage and personal injury, That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you're a peaceful protester, protest peacefully. Do what the police are asking of you. If there's a curfew, follow the curfew. It's for your safety. So with that, I know I spent the first 15 and a half minutes talking about something that I think we need to talk about sometimes, occasionally. Sometimes we have to have those hard questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hop into some of these questions. Janie did give me her answers to these questions. I'm going in a little bit of a different direction because I knew that today was going to be a little bit heavy. What is your personal mission statement? For me, it is to do all the good that I can to as many people as I can for as long as I can. I know that isn't original to me. I do believe, I don't remember who, I think it might have been John Wesley who originally said that. But Janie's mission statement is from John 3:30. He must increase, therefore I must decrease. So of course she shows me up with the Bible passage. All right then. So secret talent for Janie, she can make her bowling ball move as she moves her body. We're going to actually have to eventually get a demonstration on that because I don't even know what she means by that. Is that body language, body English? I don't know. For me, this is an amazing thing that not many people know that I can do, but I can make my hands fart. You're welcome. What's the craziest thing I've ever done or seen? I think the craziest thing I've ever done is I've skydived or skydove. I don't know which one's proper there. The thing that I saw that was crazy is when I was in high school, our high school basketball team had gone to state. And we lived north of Seattle. State was in Tacoma, which is south of Seattle. So me and a couple of other guys were driving in his the Griswold family truckster, heading south on I-5, when out of the northbound lane, a car comes barrel rolling towards us and misses our bumper by mere inches. And I was amazed that it happened, but we just kept going, and I think our team won state that year. So for Janie, she opened up a AAA travel guide and pointed, and that was a place where she ended up moving to work on a dude ranch in Cody, Wyoming. And so, yeah, pineapple on your pizza, yay or nay? Janie is yes to pineapple with olives, bacon, and ham. And for me, I said, why not? If you want to eat your pizza, go for it. If you want to eat your pizza that way, go for it. Where we all need to come together as a country, though, is we need to drive those crazies out that want mayonnaise and peas on pizza. I've seen it. It looks gross. Don't do it. So if I had a yacht, what would I name it? I would name it Money Pit because we all know that BOAT stands for bust out another 1,000. Janie said Serenity. What fictional family would you want to be a part of? For me, the Pevensey family. If you are familiar with Chronicles of Narnia, you'll recognize that name. And then for Janie, she said The Incredibles because she would love to have a superpower to read people's minds. And then our final question is, how would you describe your job to a bunch of 5-year-olds? And I said, I get to tell people what to do so that they can become more like Jesus. And then Janie said that she sells drugs. She's a drug dealer. In all seriousness, she says she makes people feel better by getting them their medicine. So I know that we've covered quite a bit, and it's we've been at this for just under 20 minutes now. And I know that I want to hear from you guys. And so we're going to click over here in just a moment to the Zoom room. Again, it's if you want to click over there and then come back and close this window, it would be good. That way it doesn't roll to the next YouTube video. But the Zoom room is tinyurl.com/zoomit with a hyphen in between Zoom and it. If you click on that, it should take you right over there. It's in the comments there. You can right click on it. You can then open in a new tab. Whatever you want to do, you can do that. But before you click on over there, let me pray. Jesus, there is so much hurt and pain going on in this world right now. And I've been praying, my wife and I have been praying that you would come soon. We know that things are going to get worse before they get better. And that's not always an encouraging thing. But what we do know is that you, Jesus, are still on your throne. Doesn't matter who the president is, doesn't matter who runs against him, doesn't matter who's voted into the Senate or into Congress or anything like that. Jesus, you are our King. We bow our knee to you. And where you call us to go, we will go. What you tell us to do, we will do. And we ultimately, we would just ask in this time that you would bring some healing to our land. Would you unify people who are miles and miles apart, culturally miles and miles apart, generationally miles and miles apart? Bring some healing to our land. For us individually as members of the Huntington Christian Missionary Alliance, we just ask that you would help us to see where you're currently working, even during this COVID crisis. Help us to partner with you, and we praise you in your name. Amen. All right, I'll see you in a couple seconds here.